So, what I can call a tragedy.
Everybody touch it today.
Sanje Cheda Soja Son.
Ganja Bada Dagni Gapsuchi, Dagi Chunyan Gibe Toknam King. Jolam Panja Sange Jupasho.
Oh, Sanje Cheda Soja.
Kusoki Chonam La, Janju Bada. Dagni Gapsuchi, Dagi Chunyan Gibe Toknam King. Jolam Panja Sange Jupasho.
Sanje
Sange Chonam Suki Chonam La, Janju Bada Dagni Gapsuchi. Dagi Chunin Gibe Toknam King, Jolam Panja Sange Jopasho.
Sho Taya Ta Omon Gade
Gate para Sam Gate Body Soha.
Taya Ta
Om Gate para Sam Gate Body Soha.
Taya Ta
Om Gate para Sam Gate Body Swaha.
몰라서 심지어 탐정도 토자라나 맞아봐 산재 공부를 뭐지 신의 토바샤 디제도 그 자주스면 라잖아 최지도 나도 나와래 나 신고 신발에 퇴고 퇴지 쇼만 놓아지거든 안 가서 보고 계속 좀 보시 원래서 주주가 되는 대신 팀이 삼삼제
And so we set our motivation at the outset to do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment in order to benefit sentient beings. In order to do this, we know we must engage in the practices known as the Bodhisattvas practices. We must understand what they are about, and we must gain this understanding by relying upon a non-mistaken text and source. And so it is with this in mind that we are here to listen to a text known as the King of Mind Training Texts, the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, as composed by the great master Shantideva.
어제 근데 남주도 내신체네 다간자 저 가서다 검다단 디지온도 아니 랑게 둥게 난갈란 뭐랑게 진짜 라마라 나바 탑jel라 투제 좀 봐 도바샤제 도바시 세탑
And as usual also, in terms of our being able to use this teaching as a meditation, we set up the merit fields. The merit fields, which is containing our own root guru, in actual fact, our own root guru, but in the aspect of the greatly compassionate and skilled and means one Shakyamuni Buddha.
도바샤제 도바샤제 찬이 예사냐 예냠자기다 루즈 두제가 우제나마 꿀라 초고 몸에고 도저서 아니 어디든지 아니 뭐좀 거려 요섬자 랑게 타고도야 아니 랑게 란바 토마메메 팅게 마게 심자 탐제 마상 오메바 요서 마게 심자 탐제 스다 세디 파마 생가마 디가마 토마메메 팅이 잡다 다간제 마게 심자 탐제 마상 오메바 요서 어디로 공부자
And that the merit field, the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha has one face and two hands, the right hand in the earth-touching mudra, the left hand in the meditative equipoise mudra, holding an alms bowl filled with nectar. He is seated in the Vajra posture, wearing the saffron robes of a monk. And all around us are all kind mother sentient beings, beginning with our parents of this life, and then our parents of the life before this one, before that one, until we go back to countless lifetimes since beginningless time, and we feel that they are all surrounding us and without exception.
아니 데라 아니 가서데 동해에 나와라 미스베 니제 대화데 된두고 잡아 동해 탐제데 대화 탐제 때마다 니 지긴서 학습 다 지가 저도 심제 탐제서는 심제 찍라야 대화 탐제 때마다 동해 탐제 저 제마도 세버려 다 된데 제베 니바데 술라도스나 심제도 투게 라라라 뭐바서 산제바다 랑게 된다 세도 라마 투베 온베 코나도 콩에 공부하지 마다도 다음에도 토바치기 삼사고들로 공부하자
So when we're looking at all of the sentient beings all around us, we realize that they have to undergo and to experience all of the different aspects of suffering, be it the suffering of change, And also, of course, that which induces those two sufferings, pervasive suffering. And we develop an kind of unbearable sense of wanting to relieve the suffering of these sentient beings, giving rise to compassion. And then also we develop a very intense desire to place them into every happiness, which brings forth a sense of love. And then that inspires a sense of personal responsibility, that I can develop this special intention to do this for all sentient beings, only for reality to hit and to realize I can't do this properly for one sentient being at the moment. But when I see what status will allow me to really fulfill this goal, I realize it is the state from which has developed a mind of enlightenment for the benefit of all, who has proceeded on the path for the benefit of all, and who has manifested full and complete enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And therefore, I realize that I must attain the state of enlightenment in order to be able to benefit all sentient beings. And so focusing on sentient beings with the sense of compassion, focusing on the Guru Munindra in the merit field with the triple faith of the faith of pure faith, the faith of conviction, and manifest faith, and really developing this to a sense of having great conviction.
Then Lama to be on Botella, and said Lama to be on the Chivo Onka, but Timba Amo, to her home, but you go to set up, and you go to the Sapato Mebaton. Because of the Takanja Onka Kajak Market Simja Tamjala, we said the Paul, and then Toma Meba Diba the Tibetic Maja. And they did such a match, my Jamba Chasu, some take it our day, and the Tonson don't you and other me, Chibechen, not so back a cannon, and the children gave said that Chavala Yapi. Children gave said that Chavala Pula then, children gave said that Chibe Chuba to get a target, and to get the water, they were talking about the Teton, she gets some such. And the dog, you can the children gave said that Kuzutu in Bala, number Lama to be on bed, number. Journey, Raga Juna said, Lamatuga on what the team. Did a newsman about Chusu, sound by newsman about Chusu, Lion Lamatuga on what Tuga said, Pado Baba Tune, Takaja, Ongel Hana Chanta, and Deshawana Telamu Ongo to share so on Tableton, only Ongo, and Chila Machazo Novale, and Mijiba Wiki, what is Kumasha.
So then we see that the Guru Munindra as the merit field is marked by 3 syllables, at the crown, at the throat, and hung at the heart center. Light rays begin to emanate from all 3 syllables, going out into all of the 6 realms of beings, and in terms of in that light dissolving into all of the sentient beings in those realms, affecting a thorough purification of all negativities and obscurations that have been accumulated since beginningless time. And the virtue of this act itself then is offered to all of the Buddhas of the 3,000 realms, and in the 10 directions, say, and in terms of making that offering of all the offerings of celestial beings and human beings as well. And these offerings have been accepted, and then they show the aspect of being pleased, and then they the qualities of all of these Buddhas is represented by these wisdom beings which come and dissolve into the crown of our Guru Munindra in the merit field, and they become a non-dual. Light rays again emanate from the 3 syllables from the Guru Munindra, going out into the natural abode and inviting back the empowering deities who offer the empowerment, the nectar of empowerment, some of which then overflows and spontaneously produces the figure of Akshobhya on the crown.
Ordinary compassion, order, Lama to be on 라다 심절에 닝제 라마 투병 보다 이시바 뭐서 다 추지 자와 살을 집에 다니 임바도 뭐 줘봤잖아 임바도 이모 뭐 줘서 뭐 줘봤잖아 어다 간자 안텔라 다와에다와 이지게 되고 뭐도 되고 어딜 주고 안텔은 저 지금 심지어 탐지게 돈도 안 산제 고반 요원도 마탐도 지금부터 토바지 싸서 어딘데 아니 로지고 안텐데 두바데 된데 두바데 아니 라게 닝게 요소 다외 정원 약 이게 아질라 줘서 용서 줘봐 다외 정원 약 가서 줘서 제 뭐다 심지어 탐지게도 산제 고반 주고에서 주고 나데 가봐도 세잖아 나데 소소 류들도 샘들도 류셀에 시방 가지 두고 파쳐봐도 다 가인 얘기 못 와. 다 많이 받은 맵에 되어 말이야. 많이 받은 가르던 것은 라운드로 맞추고 다 등고 유바에서 다디 된데서 많이 받 대가라 셈샤나 가자 가좀 대가라 셈샤. 된데게 아니 거서데 예배 로티 이게 홍지라 좀 홍요소 주발래 도지가 뭐 쟁가 봐. 이게 참바 유견지 아니 다외 때도 단내 소 삼사 어디를 공부자.
So then we again focus on the Guru Manindra, realizing how the Buddha has now been fully consecrated, is really present there for us. And again, this inspiration of pure faith, of manifest faith, and the faith of conviction arises, and we reaffirm that I will quickly do whatever I can to attain the state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. And this aspiration, this bodhicitta aspiration, is symbolized then by the syllable A. And this as comes to our heart center and transforms into the moon disk, representative of the mind of enlightenment. Then this self, this I, says, which included in that sentence, I wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. We ask, where is this sense of this self-powered I to be found? We look into the body-mind complex and go through the analysis of looking for this self that should be self-evident and not finding it. And then we conclude that because we don't find it, that it is a non-existent, that the self is non-existent? No, we cannot make that assumption. What is the consequence of not finding such a self is that we realize that this self is something which is rising independence. It must something that cannot exist from its own side. And this mere negation of the object of negation, we focus on that, and that then produces the syllable hung. That hung at the heart center is transformed into a white five-pronged upright Vajra, which sits on the moon disk.
아니 두 남야 땅에 사자 산제 공부 못하고 봐도 아니 여기에 라기는 거서 내가 지금 서와다 간제 딜라테네 아니 가서 란듀라 가서 다 간제 지금 란첸젠다 안 단제 말이 봐 아니 빠차다 제가 마방게 봐도 아니 배 내가 지금 띵 얘기 다디 란첸젠 단제 말이 봐 빵얘기 다 빵얘기 그 가서 다 간제 맞다고 이 상자전 지 남야 여기에 다 산제 공부 못하고 봐도 여기에 란첸젠 단제 말이 봐 빠차다 제가 마방게 봐도 여기에 땅에 상자고 단단한 주마 추제래 바티 주마 많이 배운 거 같아. 내가 광도 펜에 다 산제 그 투주게 아니 가서데 현진제당 다음에 또 배셔가 거 맞고 봐도 여기에 다 그래서 정이 상자 어디에 그 담자샤 어디에서
And so we really have this representative of the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness at our heart center. It is time for us to really make a powerful pledge that we will never, ever forsake these twin mindsets until we attain the state of enlightenment. And again, like we realize that, what we need to do is to really rid ourselves of this self-cherishing mindset and the ignorance of self-grasping, and that we need to overcome these twin minds and their imprints, completely eradicated, by employing the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing emptiness. And so I again make my pledge that I will never forsake, I will always apply these two enlightened mindsets to rid myself of the self-cherishing and the wisdom, the ignorance of self-grasping, that's particular nexus of damaging mindsets. I realize that what I am pledging here is at the artificial level now, but I am determined to make it unartificial and genuine as quickly as possible.
야, 어디를 공부하셔? 어디를 다 뒤에도 되나? 저주고兄弟你삼자 어디를 공부하셔? 어디를 쳐?
And so, as part of my pledge, I will now really study and listen and apply these teachings from the Bodhisattva's way of life.
어디를 쳐? 아니 그걸로서 가서
Shopdrang Nigya Songju So Truk Nibade Niba Nyembo Gebe Taplandi Niba Nyembo Gebe Taplandi.
이거 올라서 뭐랬다? 올라서 갑자기 쉬셔라. 단 니버 기베 탑라 니잖아. 다 나섬전라 차바 방와다. 아니 가서 친니고라 니고라 소발라 차바 방고 차바 방방고 섬전 니자. 다 당보데 나섬전라 차바 방와텔라 차바 방와텔라 니잖아. 차베 님이 삼다에. 그러다 아니 가서 님이现在呢다 방에게 탑라 좀 받지야지. 방방고체. 니제 다보 차베 님이 들어 삼다와텔라 아니 나체네. 되베 된다 미체 받지. 되는지 가서도 연주 받지. 톱다 가서 조미시 받지. 안 타발라 계획 받지. 대조 취소 받지.我大概가서 다다디 가서 차베 님이 들어 나체 어디는 체.
And so we had begun a second main outline in relation to what the conditions necessary for the developing of mental quiescence. And the first of these is developing the means of generating the antidotes. This is two subheadings inside. First is internally or abandoning attachment to sentient beings. Secondly, externally abandoning attachment to wealth and reputation. The first of these has two subheadings itself. That is the internally abandoning attachment to sentient beings. It's the first of these is the fault of attachment, and secondly, understanding the fault, abandoning it. So the first of these again, that is the fault of attachment, has 5 subheadings. These are the not meeting with the object of desire, the being contaminated by the object of desire, the even attaining that object being dissatisfied, the obstacle to liberation, and the squandering of leisure and endowment.
그래서 어때지 다 간다 당부대 가지 되베 된다 미체반에서 다 착발라 되네 되베 된다 미체반에 미다 수시 미다라 양다 착바 제바요 되네 제라 동자도 두바 통화 용미 조스.
So the first of these was then not meeting with the object of desire. This is dealt with in verse number 5, which reads, because of the obsession one transient being has for other transient beings, he will not see his beloved ones again for many thousands of lives.
미다베 수시 년시 미다바 양다바라 차바제데서 라니 다가서 미다바 템보메베 라시 제인게 템보메고서다 주되게 남친 예매 인게 라게 착사가 유년 되게 돼 남친 예매 인게 라치원 예바 남친 예매 된데 인 되게라 아니 문에 전에 저는 다 착사돼서 매 되겠지 차되게 여러 왔다 라 조메바 된데 되게 된데 내나 삼사고 로키고도 로네시 디나시 두배 매되게 좋아 두배 매der 뭐 여기 내주 마시면 온거 용대로 당진 온거 용대게 요로 된데 인서 라니 뉴도 치외 미다바 수시 년시 미다바라 양다바 차바 제대 오늘 저는 이 조메게 때문에 되게지 차서 유지 요 말했어 요대 년두바라 차바 제바 되네 안에 차라 동자 도양 년두바 통화 되대 때는 통화 용매 줘서 봐 그래서 무튼에 통되에 되대 교환매바 되대 그 용해 거라 요 말로 미조 셔고 다들 뭐 이거 내주대 마시바 온게 인데 뭐 이거 내주 셔바이나 될 차서 유민도 와서 왔다 차서 내면도 왔어 랑이 차게 차네 차서 유게 차네 네가 차네 아니 딱같이 차서가 내매 되겠지 딜라데는 차바이나 아니라 동네 요한테 가지고 뭐유기 내주도 미도바 삼로 다는데 아니 거 뭐유기 내주 미도바 삼로 딜라다네 미도베 동네 나서 요한테 그와 어떻게 숨겨
And so this verse deals with the separation from, say, the object of our attachment to the loved one. And it's really a case of really not understanding the true reality of situations like this. So you have, say, you know, we will quickly pass away because we are impermanent. That friend or loved one will also pass away because they are impermanent. But we ignore that reality and have this attached obsession with them, wanting to be with them, wanting to meet with them. And it's because of that attached obsession that we will actually not meet with our loved ones for thousands of lifetimes, saying that there's no way, you're not creating the situation, you're not creating the conditions for this to happen. And it's really, you know, not understanding. It's grasping at permanence to begin with, of not accepting that death is permanent, especially that the time of death is impermanent. And so because of all these reasons, you create this tremendous suffering for yourself out of this attachment.
교환매바 때문에 내가 매되고 가서도 보다 내절로 라식의 춘이 차대어래 라식의 춘이 되다 좀 봐지 어서 삼로 마다바 예바이나 아니 동해 용되게 열와 뭐 내좀 밑에 받쳐도 동해 용되게 열래 어디로 뭐도 동해 그 뭐유게 내주 다 밑에 삼로서 땅할 때는 아니 동해 용되고 뭐유게 내주 좀 삼로 땅와이나 동해 용두고 요 말이야.
So again here this is the what's called the internal of this attachment to other sentient beings. External would be attachment to wealth and to reputation, and it's the separation that occurs inevitably that causes this tremendous suffering. And it's suffering because of the fact of not really accepted the natural law, the way things actually are, of grasping onto a permanent sense. There always will be there and so on. And so that's if you don't see that, if you don't see the reality of the situation, suffering is the result. There's no doubt about it. But if you have no object of attachment, then you have no suffering resulting from that. So we must make that distinction very clearly.
안들 깔래 작게도 고마 줘 봐. 안 뒤치도 동에 영화도 고마 줘 봐. 되고 또. 루아 달고 sabject colonel 송구도 되거든. 되베 되다 밑에 봐. 되베 돼. 교함에 봐. 때부 내 되게 되고 열어. 교함에 봐. 때부 내 되고 영화에 걸어 요 말다. 영화에 매대는 되더는 뒤주 쳐라. 아니 딜라테네 아니 동에 주먹부지 싸디에. 내가래 동에 먹부지 용디에. 그 삼로 땅나다 미 샤단 그 우유게 내주 가르자 디다 두바 삼로 땅나는 뒤주 쳐라 마동바 아니 되베 되 주바 디가 용디기로
So here from the root text, it's is really saying that it's not meeting with the object of desire, and so it's really pointing out here that if you have misunderstood the fact that this is something which is impermanent, it will pass, that you are still grasping at the permanence of that situation. And then you're not only creating a whole kind of nexus of suffering, and not only that, but you're wasting time, you're creating the causes for suffering, you're suffering at the time as well. It's just a lose-lose situation for yourself, because of the fact that you do not see the actuality of a situation, that object of desire is something that which cannot stay. It is something that is in moment by moment disintegrating. That particular time, that particular relationship, everything about it is changing, and one, if one doesn't accept the law of impermanence, that is, everything is in momentary change, and then we are setting ourselves up for a lot of suffering, a lot of time wasting, and indeed, the kind of confusion and stupidity of our decisions.
아니 딜라테네 페나 뭐저거 미조 주에디 미조 되게 뭐저 디기 고거래 디기게 자와데 아니 다음에 또 배셔람 되는 거 다음에 또 배셔라 개발아 3년 고거래 3년 개발아 추좀 고요 다 디게 영어에 객 제도도 와 로아 가서데 랑게 뒤주 건가 돼 가서 차베 가서 다 차바 딜라테네 로아다 차바 딜라테네 다 가서 차바 딜라테네 용도 돼 차베 님이 그 차바들한테 교육가를 용도 시작하이나 아니 되베데 미체바 임바질라 아니 체가 레와카니 아니 근데 제대 뒤주 졸았다야 아니 딜라데네 대외 교조디 다음에 또베 셔랍디 체니 상황에 다음에 또베 셔라 용와라 3년 체니 상황 계고래 현내 체니 상황 계고 디게란 계제되기도 와 너되기도 와 안데 용와라 추dim 그거 되게 내 계제되기도 와 보다 되게 인사 가서데 다 람라바숨 주벨라니 계제되기도 와 도와 어디래 다진자 계제되기도 와 다진자 디라랑 문에 전에 지 걔네 대화 줘야라 아니 계제네 아니 동에네 줘야라 아니 로바제되가 소로 차되기도 와 아니 어디래 수고야 대신자 딩고제 나게도 와 어디래.
So the actuality of the situation is that, what is really our goal? Our goal, isn't it, to attain happiness, to be happy, and that the root of accomplishing that is the wisdom of selflessness. To accomplish the wisdom of selflessness, we need the necessary meditative absorption, the concentration to gain that direct realization, and indeed, to actually settle the mind enough to develop that concentration, we need to abide in perfect ethical conduct. And so this is the means by which we can attain this happiness that we want. But when we bring attachment into that equation, it is something that really creates a major obstacle to being able to develop the three aspects of the path like that. That you have the fault of, really a time wasting issue. You have the thought of being completely distracted from what you should be doing. You have this, you're living in this expectation or of this hope, often a false hope. And that this is something that is a complete obstacle to the development of ethics, which is going to affect the development of concentration, which of course is going to affect the capacity to gain a direct realization of selflessness, and thereby directly affecting your happiness. And so it's this realization of where attachment can really damage any hopes you have for your spiritual development.
어디래도 다 대인사 다 가자 맞아 다다데 가서래 통조성의 세당성의 교인보다 착바성의 교인 통해라 좀더 더 가보여래 가장도 착바 유연대 다되게 먹고 유연되게 네 가서 합다 때나 소소를 팽거 여와서라지 소소를 디기 되고 여보다 좀 통고도가我大概电影对我做了出版用应该是这个上了年不马上呢我出来多少看多
So when it comes to the mental afflictions, anger or hatred is something that is quite easy for us to see and to accept the fault of, because it's a very, loud, very kind of obvious negative mind state. But we are often very confused and conflicted and ambiguous when it comes to attachment. We do not see the fault of attachment. Some of us even see it as a good quality, as something which helps, which is beneficial, which is a key to my happiness, and that's so you need to be really smart to be able to really kind of overturn this particular misunderstanding, and to see attachment for what it is something which is detrimental.
착바성의 배 지금 가서래 지금 가서래 딩게를 줘서 가서 지금 가서래 디 진로부 지가라 아니 장지 주셔와 잡고 요래스 그봐 장지 주셔와 다 장지 주셔다 장지의 롱장한테 제제는 간장서도 라는 내가 요거도 제바주고도 와 제바주고도 와들 다 딜라 되는 착바달라 되는 아니 디다 밑에 뭐저 당와 게임고도 착바달라 되는 당와 게임고도 딜라 밑에 뭐 딜라 당와 게임고도 아니 안 딜라 되는 다 레니 바 나서저 싸움고도
And so, again, that image that we met with last week, I think it was, the attachment is like honey on a razor's edge, the very sharp edge that you see the honey there, you want to partake of that honey, you stick out your tongue, you have this moment of sweetness, which is followed by a cut tongue. And that, this is the nature of attachment, that, once you become then overwhelmed by that attachment, then a lot of negative karmas ensue from that as well. The actions that are done in the pursuit of attachment, etc. So one must be aware of that this is in the guise of something which is good and wholesome, it is in fact a very detrimental mind state.
가서는 차단데 알고 라에도 뭔가 머리에 꾼에 라에도 그 자와도 머리에 꾼에 라에도 그 가르치네 그 뇌기근지 차되기도 뇌기근지 차되기도 어떤데
And so the root of attachment and aversion comes from the ignorance of self-grasping, and that it's that from that point of view, when we understand that, we can see the fault of attachment very clearly.
뭐 이거 내주 마시고 안데 간다 땅진다 되게 돼 용되기도 오다 간제 어딘데 용도 어딘데 다 어딘데 다 되네 가서 다 니바 어서 되는지 对对姐是研究吧，你是对对姐研究吧，你早完了，马多那能看米酒，一家娘做米酒拉萨，
And the second of these five subheadings was that the contamination coming from the object of desire. The first half of verse number 6 reads, "Not seeing them, I am unhappy, and my mind cannot be settled in equipoise."
我这他一动为年度过的马多那呀的天呢。如果地点呢，得到个啥，得到马桶那呢，高尔米就，地点呢，呀，说做这个，没几把用的，伦理用的，帮不用这个多，用这个的，得了呢，过三代过没了给这个多，他同样呀，得了一个呢呀，第一段大了呀，来掉蒙古这个的，结果也强呢，得了一个呢，一家等个这个娘做米就拉死，他同，个对呢娘做这样得了的呀。让了让现在要来，怕叫的来让现在要，现在我个样，拿了个鸟巢忙不就用这个多，等个这个月来，你这个忙不接的着，等个这娘把做完，没就完，写我讲，
And so again, here it's that, when we do not see the object of our attachment, the attractive object of our attachment, then we are unhappy. And then when we see them, then we are distracted. And so our aspiration to develop mental quiescence of gaining concentration is completely disturbed, and that it's really a difficulty. And so, when we do not meet with our object of attachment, again, this kind of starts to infect the mind, if not dominate the mind, with loneliness, depression, etc. And that it becomes an obstacle to our concentration then. But when we do meet with our object of attachment, then of course we are both hosts to self-cherishing, both sides, and from that all sorts of inner problems arise with our object of attachment, and that in turn creates an obstacle for our concentration. And so you can see it doesn't help one way or the other.
这我说就旁边评价的中国着的，马肚那来通的这土也个对吧？修成不用啊，土咋的呢？呀的可说的，可说土咋的呢？呀，这个你们看现在呀，鸟着用这个多，你看这家有这他感觉鸟着蒙不用这个多，他感觉该呢没呢，这个确实被给进了做的。给进了，好多都等个这个娘们这个进来，这里给进做这个多，给进做这个的，但是这等个这娘把做过，可是娘把做过的时，你就写吧，我讲
And so this relates to, the meeting of relatives or friends and so on, that can initially be something very joyous for us and great happiness, but, it can also easily turn to a negative problem and trouble arising of argument ensuing and so on. And either way, it is an obstacle to our development of meditative stabilization.
我的。可是也我去我这，他说吧，托讲超米些吧是，他说吧，托讲超米些早晚呢，同样我们可是米酒月那些设备动画就是，
And the third of these outlines was even if we attain our object of desire, then there is no satisfaction. And the rest of verse number 6 deals with this. Even if I see them, there is no satisfaction. And as before, I am tormented by craving.
他感觉这样这个查这个图，也这个这样查这图了的呢，也没呢，也这个是塞巴也给呢，也木头的土的用的，也没呢，对了也。就鸟着的，刚开始就是木头的杭州当斜当爬的，对了，现在呢，等个这个给装这个的话，我在那用的，他在那用把一张，就是移动我当然都把同样设备我把米就把是，米就表示 nga shen do de la sebe dongwa juros to ga do ine ta ga so de ji ge ga so de cha ba la de ne de ne ta tu za de yang jo ani yang ji cha sen shu che de ne ani yang jiao tu go ye de ba chi ye de de yong de ge yo de yang men na ne yang cham보 yo ba de ma cha ba cha che ne yang 黄州的写当给写完了，就那样这个的那也用这个的，第二个用的就是吧。
So then saying here that even if we meet with the attractive object of our desire, then there is no satisfaction. And then like before, then we are tormented by this craving, this grasping. So it's kind of like saying you might meet with them, one time, but then arising from that due to the attachment itself, anger can follow, disagreement can follow, and unfriendliness can follow. And that, even then, other than that, even after that, greater attachment can arise because of that meeting. And that, again, one is left, as it were here, as it says, tormented by that craving.
大概这个说的，我这个的定个这个给几个月吧的，给几个月吧的，西北团呢，安尼的定个这了马牛外他也修改一下，定个这伢们结果了马牛外他也修改一下，这上面当过的给这么些多，我的。
So in this context, it's very important to remember how this becomes an obstacle to meditative stabilization, and that then how we can do something about that, because our main goal is to attain meditative stabilization. What can we do that assists that process rather than what is it that creates an obstacle to it?
他喜欢他把那给这把那早晚来是，甚至那么了查着呢，养大你了，归那地，就是先讲几块钱，他们两年多少就是。
And then the second or the fourth of these subheadings was how this attitude creates an obstacle to liberation. Verse number 7 reads, "Through being attached to living beings, I am completely obscured from the perfect reality. My disillusionment with cyclic existence perishes, and in the end, I am tortured by sorrow."
我的了解，他感觉。 这个是移动为深圳那么大，七八千的让给个是的人，他移动为深圳那么七八千呢，养大把滚了这把钱的，第了七八了的呢，养大把内陆写把了这把几个人是，觉得这个内陆写把了这把钱是，我有的内处的没对吧？上了当个月的，我有内处写把了这把几个人觉得。 去年我送给通话来，得了的呢，去年我送到我是用途嘛，是得了给这个通话结真是，考教育研究，什么叫这个？他考了教育上研究个什么的给图个嘛的是，得了一个呢考呢，什么叫这个这个？得了的呢，他考了研把叫研究没呢，他把什么的，他把中头落给个嘛的，他把多呗，干没把吃个的，我干没把吃中主要是。 다들 타마데 소소 가리 용어서 타마 이동화 되다냐 아니 카테도 거 때도 내 요말 왔어 이동화 되다 나 예바 아니 카테도 더 되베 아니 냥에 동화 줄었다 모두네 아니 코에 동에 나서버 용에게 동에 나서버 용 되면 또 심어 가 용마 다들 그래서 된대게 뒤주 땅 갈래 잡아들 저부 가야 매 되겠지 저부 가야면서 소도 저부 돼 대화 되고 대화 가야면 그 모두는 동네 용어들 책에서 아니 냥의 동화 주로 셔보죠.
And so here it really points out the different faults of the attachment to an attractive sentient being. And to here it's saying that, it creates a definite obstacle to our being able to see directly the true reality. And that therefore it creates an obstacle to liberation itself. And not only that, but it creates disillusionment. The disillusionment that we have with cyclic existence is, as it says in the verse, perishes or is severely compromised from this attachment. that renunciation is destroyed. And that because of that, then there is no opportunity for the attainment of liberation. Finally, because of the fact that we must have a definite separation from this object of desire, we are going to suffer. And we're going to have, it says here, be tortured by sorrow, because all the time that we have spent, now we think wasted, all the effort that has been expended has no result to it except suffering.
我在那讲，他感觉我那种这个说那个米旅店嘞，第一呢，点着个旅店嘞，点着个旅店的，那他把他们家看把主头个另外有个这个旅店是差掉的，他的那个点着个旅店个你不连马都把钱呢，他感觉，他连马都把钱呢，东安讲个木头的东安有个就是中起码有那他说说他感觉这个说的他这个说的。밀류 렘바도 고마 쪽어서죠. 그러다 밀류 렘게 고마 쪽어서 변을 찾아봐이나 저거서데 저거 가서데 사자 찍을래 노부 다 전부 시우지 연주 여봐지 아니 깔려 잡는 친친 대 사자들라 친네 아니 노부 가야 말아 저 라고 동바 소 로아 이마이나 딱 고마 쪽어봐. 다 din나는 정도도 대 밀류 렘네 타바다 탐색 잡아 두투에게 아니 천년 유에 되겠지 타바다 탐지 캠바 두베게 아니 배주 맞아 봤자 무트는 코알은 내대 무트네 안양송라서 동안 유에 된데 규지 좀 대바이나 다 밀려려봐도 고마줘 봐 쳐버려 고마줘 봐 쳐버려 다 간제 소소다 가서 밀려려봐데 밀려가 니불려만도 봐자 라고 동바 동야제 아니 개와치마 다 양송라서 봐 아니 개도 유튜브에 치면 다 고마줘 버려 다 뒤소로 찾고 열어
And so we have attained a human rebirth, and not only that, but a rebirth with a precious human rebirth. And you know what is implicit in that understanding or that realization is that we must use this opportunity to attain liberation and the omniscient state of enlightenment as much as we possibly can. And that this is called taking the essence of this precious human rebirth. But if we fail to do that, if we are distracted from that purpose, for example, attachment, then we are kind of completely, as it were, betraying this opportunity that is, as kind of we have by some amazing means have attained, and that we are bequeathing only suffering solely for our future, continuous and endless suffering, and that we have then rendered this precious human rebirth, this opportunity is pointless. We should be pointless having attained it. And so we must understand what's at stake really here. That yes, it's a great good fortune, but it comes with great responsibility. And that we must understand just how many and how perfect the conducive conditions are when we have attained a human life and a precious human rebirth and met with the Dharma, etc. here. But were we to deny that, to betray all that, and then to kind of just go empty-handed into the future only with the suffering to look forward to, the lower realms and continuous suffering in cyclic existence to look forward to, that would be really quite tragic.
그래서 뭐저 쇼핑 센터 침부지 나라라 응위캔의 잘라녀같이 안 잘라녀같이네 안 그게 잘라녀사 녀고에 대 마녀바 제제네 마녀바 제제네 안데 게임세사 기소나서 되날 주 응위가 쇼르스나 아니 잘라 요마레 응위야 요마다 라바동바 나라 로도에와 오다 디소로 찾고 도와 디소로 찾고 도와
So it's like, you know, you're going to the shopping center to buy your stuff and so on, and then you have this you know, it never seems to be satisfied the amount that you have, but also then you have all of this advertising for betting to bet on your future and so on. Spend your money to bet, then you lose both your money and the capacity to buy stuff in the supermarket. So it's a double loss. So in kind of like wasting your precious human rebirth is similar to that. So you have no stuff, you have no money, and then as Genda says, the criticism starts in the family, the teaching starts.
배디다 총에 걸어 요 말이 다다 배디니 고 총에 걸어 요 말다 다가스 셈을 차단 랍샤면도 배디 총에 걸어 요 말다 공무쇼네 고 선임무 시바지라운 거리 야 묘쪽으로 와 다다다 대적을 류된 라반의 쇼차나 다 뺐어 좋소
So in fact, then they're saying there is
녀손네 대적을 류된 렘바다 대적을 류된 탐색해봐 두바잖아 대적을 류된 탐색해봐 두 레샬라기를 숨고도 와
so really there is no image example that could explain the loss of the opportunity of a precious human rebirth, of not being able to take the essence of a precious human rebirth. It really is that disastrous for us. See, and one must understand, it says in the text that it is compared to getting from the lower realms up to a precious human rebirth. It is actually easier to get from a precious human rebirth to the state of enlightenment. So when you see that fact of something, you realize what a disaster, what a shocking shame it is to waste the essence of a precious human rebirth.
Yeah, what did 배샤다 거 녀자 자가치 니마 지금 배샤 매워져 선이 배샤 용 쪽으로 양 녀자 자 쪽으로 거 지금 군지 중국문도 와 단단히 단적으로 류대서 라반에 쇼차나다 다 차버려 그러나 고모 못 먹보지 라반에 쇼와 이면에 소소 미스 대여나 고모 못 먹고 소쪽으로 당부 경원도 라바 동바 용거요 봐 경원도 가야 매봐 니게 용거요 봐 이나야 소소 갈래 자는 거 고모 못 먹고 소투요 봐 야, 공부 부망부 매바 차이네 소소 수부 대보체 데레제레 공부 부망부 소투 그래. 이네 된적을 누는데 쇼와 이나 가와.
And so money is, you lose your money, you can make it back again, and but when a precious human rebirth is gone, it's gone. And so, we all come in to this world empty-handed, naked. But as we grow up, we become, grown up fit, we can start earning money. You can make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and so on. But if you waste the precious human rebirth, that opportunity is gone. And the chances of getting it back are very, very rare. And one must see that very clearly.
다 가봐 된저 취소하네서 원래 다 달라야들 자war래 대라 선바 바시게 체대 되면 다와 줬어.
So the fifth of these points was the fifth of these points then was the squandering of our leisure and endowment of a precious human rebirth. So the first half of verse number 8, by thinking only of them, this life will pass without any meaning.
다 되베 유이동와 될라 안 semba 바시게 다 될라 차바 sem바시게 안 세대 되면도 다와 주라 세대 안 인부들 렌도 마서 되면와 다와 주에 아니 대 교활할 때는 소소 된조데 로다 취소 당조도 매우 소도 취소 송어 주로写吧我想
So it's pointing out that this object of desire, this is sentient, this attractive sentient being, and we kind of are just fixated on that sentient being. And by thinking only of them in terms of attachment, then our life will pass without meaning, you know. And it's saying particularly these pleasures and endowments of a precious human rebirth will be squandered.
我的去厕所觉得我的我的你把的你们现在帮我讲完了，你们上吧得帮别催落，催落这，当不你们上吧得了你去呢，你给吧些吧短多还讲，他当不给吧些吧得了送去呢，短全部积极研究提吧，短全部积极研究这没有说研究提吧，即便说没点劲，点吧搞啊。得来先把米多钱，那把了叫我钱，我得了钱。
So the second of the more major headings was through understanding the fault, how to abandon. And this has the two subheadings. First of all, reflecting on the fault. Secondly, how to abandon that fault. And the first of these, reflecting on the fault, has two subheadings. First of all, a more extensive explanation, and then a short summary. And then with regard to the first of these, the more extensive explanation, it has 3 points to make. First is the destruction of a great purpose, the leading to the lower realms. Secondly, associating with the childish, unreliable, and they are difficult to trust. And thirdly, because of that, benefit is not attained and harm is entered into.
我的了讲，他当感觉我的了 subject 的讲，他当不得了，对全部精神研究提完是说他。对全部几个节呢？说他点这个绿的，你把的对全部3节恐怕出把的，第几个这个是主要那几个是，第了没主把这研究了这个这个是，这早完了，当不你早完了，大把没别咋现金，用中学讲几个节，记得给把伢子呢，也把研究做就的，给没伢子提前呢，几把点别继续加速。
And so the first of these, then these points, that is, the great purpose is destroyed, and the one is led to the lower realms. This is dealt with through the rest of verse number 8 and verse number 9, and they read as follows. Furthermore, impermanent friends and relatives will even destroy the Dharma, which leads to permanent liberation. If I behave in the same way as the childish, I shall certainly proceed to lower realms. And if I am led there by those unequal to the noble ones, what is the use of entrusting myself to the childish?
不是，他感觉我说来当波也是大把没别杂些，没大别那个大把没把的没大别杂些个。这个如他感觉这他感觉这个让了吃下吧以内，个说的他感觉这来当波，让个罗做来，来当波吃的对，这个个说的他们那个，三路当，彻底的吃生全部越当，对应的吃过全部越当，点的这个主要点的到就不见了，大把没吧，对，没大别在些个。我有呢，最多没到啊，这东海个那些人这个，在些个，大概主要没吧，带动那个，他们这看吧，他把他们这看吧，带托别个就主别个，却讲，几把就个的是，第了别，对吧的，他妈我这对吧，伊那第向往的就对吧，伊那。 taba mebe zashe, ane tamewa di samlo tangtang tuba tili che tegi ina, ane ba tendo dewa ke, ane gyuwa meba ne tegi taba da tamche kebe ke, ane gyu tuwe ke, che jang jikwa chiga res, jikwa gyu la cha, tangpa tisla.
So here saying that one is taking that which is impermanent to be, permanent, and what is permanent to be impermanent, etc. The one is this through this attachment, this craving to this person, this impermanent relative or friend, is going to create a situation whereby one then, it's kind of like we see ourselves as a beginner, there as a beginner. Then we have this ordinary thinking ensuing from that, which is mixed up, if not dominated by attachment, which grows and gets bigger. And then under the control of that mind, then we are engaged in all sorts of activities which are counter to our goal of attaining liberation. And so that means that this attachment itself is something that is in the end would even destroy the Dharma, which leads to permanent liberation. And so again, it shows how we should avoid this sort of mind state as much as possible.
그래서 최자 집어 줄라 다 집어 소소 집어 남 란다 개바 냠바데 그래서 제월 전에 다 걸어서 내 당보 소소 집어 당서 소소 개바다 냠바로 체디 개체 못 되게 아니 란 전전 개체 못 되게 안 단지 말이 뭐 숙성부 생활도 주되게 되게 된대게 아니 삼로도 투바잖아 개바다 된대게 아니 되주도 투바잖아 그래서 개바다 냠바데 제발 저라 디 삼로다 투바잖아 소소게 미지 조단들 젠 대바이나 저바이나 녀바리 녀로 로레스다 녀바 녀로 조하면서 탑시야 요 말했어 그래서 녀도 유튜브 되기도 왔어 그래서 녀로 조아 교대 아니 가초조 두조조 어제 가서데 삼로 단적 건가 네거티브 전에 땅되게 그러와 와던데 제제도 아니 녀로 조아 교래 아니 탑시야 요 말스 녀로 교대 대다 아니 냠도 미죄증 다 디다 삼로 툼바잖아 삼로 툼바다 아니 삼로 투베토라 안 마족은 제고서 미죄진 셰야 서 파바남다 셰다 수다 투바제는 셰 아니 소소 기비 살레 아니 파베 아니 로다다 네 파바남 로 파바남다 개바 민 로다 고자 셰야서 파바남다 개바 민냠바데 디 제소 미장 오래 오다 셰야 파바 로다 그데 되게 코알의 교통에 아니 코에게 가서래 다 코알의 교통전에 아니 코알의 타베 다 아니 소식 기본에 아니 케바도 파베 파바든저 삼로 다 투마 맞아봐전 케바냐 바 미제바데 디제소 마장바데 아니 레게 바티바지 그래 티바제베 레게 바티바지 근데 인자 지바템베 지시자 근데 인자 지바 소식 기본 삼로도 투바전 디 삼로 땅다 미샤다는 시 치바 이바이나 아니 가야 편도면 소소 된적을 누데 니불련 동물 집어 때문에 지지자들 가리 편도 요래서 제대 아니 소소 된다면 봐 그래서 된적을 누데 니바 니고 맞아 왔지 그래 되면 봐 제도 셔 먹었지
So likewise, it's saying that to associate with ordinary beings known as the childish is also a very unproductive choice to make. That you're associating with people who are very much dominated by their self-cherishing and their self-grasping, and you're associating with them and doing as they do. What is the result of that, if not to head to the lower realms? Because what you will be doing is just creating the causes to actually enter the lower realms. It stands to reason, and that they're developing this situation of being very fickle, quick to be happy, quick to be depressed and sad. Lots of negative thinking resulting in negative talk. You're just creating the causes for that inevitable result of getting into the lower realms. And so you must understand that, that you can associate with these, but you mustn't think like these people. You must thinking cannot be in harmony with these people. That's what it says about the second half of the verse, or in verse number 9, if I am led there by those unequal to the noble ones. So these are the Arya beings. So here, that their sort of thinking is not in harmony with the thinking of Arya beings, and that and because of that, the childish will head to the lower realms. They will not take the essence of a precious human rebirth. There will be no benefit to having a human rebirth for them. And so one is very much admonished, or very much kind of like warned against associating with such people, lest we take up these kinds of habits and inevitably create the causes for a lower realm rebirth ourselves.
뭐더라 다 간제 단제 머리배 아니 샤완도 단제 머리배 샤완도 좋아한 나신이 전디 이게 마동와제 디 샤완도 좋아한 나신 전에 아니 라고 고송과 자원가 디 초도 당자도 아니 그 동네 장자 주에면서 대화 주에다 라오메드가 차워와 와다 돼서 지금 데데 임바 인자 와다 간제 지금 데데 제수 마장와 전에 다 간제 지금 가소래 데데 제수 마장와 전에 다 간제 제고래 수고요 디 제수 장와 임바이나 다 간제 어느 소소래 로카자 심제 탐제가 되는 주에다 파샤 소소가 되는 주두고 말했어 소소가 되는 주두고 말했어 와다 간제 어디 수고도와 어디 수고들
So it's like here, that when you are associating with people who are under the influence of self-grasping and the ignorance of grasping at the true self-cherishing, and under the influence under the control of and the ignorance of self-grasping, then you can see that and it's kind of not seeing the fault of those mindsets. This is the key thing. When you're associating in that sort of situation, then only suffering can be the result of that, and virtue is almost impossible. And so what's being advised here is do not follow after the childish, those kind of beings. And because not only you can forget about attaining liberation for the benefit of all sentient beings, of attaining enlightenment, you will not be able to achieve even your own goal. So it's a very much kind of a lose-lose situation.
그래서 람림나래 기부숨게 람림숨데 기부숨숨에데 세디 개침부 증을 기부스랑보다 지다 기부스게 가서 누가 유건지를 쓰게 열봐 누가 유건지 누가 요서 가리서도 대화 주tuk에 동에 세 두근들 누가 요바스게 열어 동에 장자 주tuk근들 누가 요바스게 열말 가서 어디 대화 두고 열봐 대화 되게 동에 두고 열말 동에 두근라 누가 요바스게 열말 대화 두근들 누가 요바스게 열어 누가 요바스게 근데 기부스에 거든데 누가 요건스게 열어 세디 개침부 증은들 누가 요바스게 열말 다 누가 요바스 거기서 기부숨게 람거를 봐서도 누가 요베 람거를 봐서 쓰게 열어 누가 요바서 다가서 기부 충고서도 세딜에 세치마 개치와 쓰긴들라 기부 충고 쓰기도 와 아니 개와 치마 것들 하다 미 고마토바네 뒤에 코아레 아니 코아레 타베 타바도도 니가 라니 집으시도 되냐거든 기부 딩 쓰기도 와 그러와 다디 타바토바이나야 라신이가 그 타치버 줘요만 라신이가 돈 타치버 줘다 탐제kim에 고마레 아니 뒤쪽에 저도 냠술한 게들라 택받치 뭐 기부치 뭐 쓰기도 와 쓰기도 왔다 세대 시우리 개첨부 쓰네 아니 가서데 저대가래 기부스를 람리나 쓰고요 말에 가서 디 동네 유튜브 되게 요바 인사 기부 쓰고요 말에 다 기부스는 누가 용어를 쓴 것도 대화 주권을 쓰고도 아니 대화 주권을 리버 숨 샤온 것도 와 리버 숨 샤온 것도 와 어디래
And so in terms of the three capacities of being, as explained in the gradual path teachings, the graduated path teachings, that the very notion of a being in this context is, it means somebody with potential. Potential for what? Potential to establish virtue in the pursuit of happiness, and the potential to eradicate the causes of suffering. And so here, for somebody who considers this life to be so important, and therefore, are kind of fully, as it were, immersed in this life only, then they are not included within these three capacities of being. There's no teaching referring to them in the graduated path teachings. That here they are seeing as not having any capacity. So for example, the person of smallest capacity, as described in the graduated path, is somebody who does not considers the future life to be more important than this life. So this is counted as the starting point of a practitioner, a being with capacity. So they have the capacity to lay down the causes to attain a fortunate rebirth, and the basis of their actions in this life. So a person who is completely obsessed and just dominated by attachment to this life, considering it to be more important, it does not is not counted as a being of smaller capacity, because their main thrust, their main obsession is just this life. So they're not even included within the three capacities of being. The medium capacity being has moved beyond just the attainment of a fortunate rebirth. They see the fault of all of cyclic existence. They want to attain liberation from cyclic existence completely. The person of greater capacity is seeing that as not a complete motivation, because just the attainment of liberation for oneself alone is not fulfilling the purpose of either oneself or others. And so the person of greater capacity, their motivation is to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So these are the three capacities related to their motivations as described in the graduated path teachings. For somebody who has just attachment to this life, they are not and can't be counted as a practitioner, because they are not seen as having capacity.
안델 펜바투 데데 제구 요래 다이네 디 캄자투 란디 제수 말라바체 디다 디 제수 디 삼로 툼바나 디다 삼로 툼바잖아 소저 치마이나 아니 년도 유튜브도 된저거 님불래 두고면도 디 삼로도 툼바 마저와체 가사데도라 제와체 펜바체 니제고 어디르제 라심제 탐제거도 상기긴서 디체도야 상 디도 탐제거도 상기긴서 요봐 어디르다 어디르제 디니디야 거서 제대마다 와체 어디자
And so these beings as described here, the childish who are obsessed with this life, who are obsessed with attachment and so on, they can't be counted as those who are beings of capacity, whether it's a smaller, medium, or greater capacity. Having said that, one must be careful not to, to ignore them or to look down on or anything. they are an object of love. They are an object of respect. They are an object to be benefited. On their basis, we can cultivate compassion. We can cultivate love. But as long as our thinking is not in harmony with their thinking, we have a much higher goal, and to kind of but on that basis, they are precious for allowing us to develop these qualities to attain our goal. But as long as we don't mix up the two kind of lifestyles, as it were, or ways of thinking, and not to mix up also the fact that and in fact, that even though our thinking can't be in harmony with their thinking, that they are nevertheless very precious human beings, sentient beings.
Ane za mi ten shing se ruwa tenpo me juwa zhu labu yin mi ten shing ane tenpar kawa ne zawa le se da zawa le keje jigin zawa jo yu zam jine chayan jo gawe ne la chua jebo su su jibu kuwa ka penpar ma na chua che da ja penle doba che deda nga ni ma nye na chuwe deda nga ni ma nye na chuwe ngen zhu chua jo che
The second of these points then was that the associating with the childish is unreliable and they are difficult to trust. Verses 10 and 11. One moment they are friends, and in the next instant they become enemies. Since they become angry even in joyful situations, it is difficult to please ordinary people. They are angry when something of benefit is said, and they also turn me away from what is beneficial. If I do not listen to what they say, they become angry and hence proceed to lower realms.
지바다 규도 체외에서 배 가추죠 두추죠 어디는 규도 체외에서 계지게 자와죠 거기 남자 내주 충주 저게야 배 가면 배 세와修주연도 체 교신 되니게 유자야 되네 간자서는 야수 저또 섬라 마바와다 남자 아니야 콘조사 되게 마지막 제되게 유산제 아니 소소로 너밖에 섬로단 되게 자양 주와다 가외 내 개발라 자와잖아 가외 문에 전에 가사가 유대 아니 대외 유튜브에 대는 가사가 유차더라디 뭐마도 왔지 난 개외 내 개발라 자와잖아 안 들을 미도 왔겠네 아니 콘도게 마가와지 좋아지바 집어 소소 기부 고와 되네 인자 집어 소소 기부 쓰는데 아니 문에 전에 그 문에 콜라 고아 용에 대 려라고 요 말을 깔라서 아니 코난 라사 펜베다 코난 운에 전에 땡기 디기 토베게네 펜베 담배 취지 마나양 당도 밀레게 안티 디고네 소소로 펜발리서 고마 쪽에 마시게 밀레바 마세 아니 데레셰바이나 야 마가와체야 콘르게 되게 제바 다자 펜베 최들에 아니 소소래 아니 운에 전에 타바도 탐지 기부 유튜브에 최주와라 아니 계획체대야 도바 제바다 대다게 나게 네서 미네 다다 대다게 나네 마녜라스다 최다 도바들 지바 제세절에 저 랑도가 내도 된데네 안 라네마다 마녜나 달라야 데데 땡게 팬도 제바 들려요 소소를 지군에 팬도 쓰는 거마 쪽에 초와 교야 년주 동바대다 년주 람라 티도 주로 셔봐서 초와 주로 셔봐서
So these verses, of course, they're dealing with those known as the childish, those who are ordinary beings with ordinary kind of thinking behind it. And their mental afflictions are always on the verge of arising. And so here first characteristic is that they are very fickle. 1 minute you're their best friend, and the next minute you're a sworn enemy. These can change. Their ability to change is changing radically, and that even in a situation of joy where virtue is possible, they generate anger in a situation like that. So it's kind of very difficult to please these ordinary childish beings. And that even when they are kind of difficult, so they are, when something beneficial is said, they do not accept that. They are angry at that, and that they have, they can even turn you away from the beneficial dharma. Something which is unbelievably beneficial. When you don't listen to them, they get angry at the fact that you're not listening, and because of their anger, they are creating the causes to fall into the lower realms.
What in the Taka me Pajola judgment here, Mare, Ina Yang, the Yoba Ina, and so or that did Chicasole. Yoba in the Yoba Ina, and so the church like cake, cigarettes as a more trebetona, and Chigi Casotosi, Casode the Carreta, sometimes same thing Yabuche, in a physical sureta, Tosi, can risk their natural cake Nugurwa, what did they? And that sheds some other Rana did do to Chevache get some more. So Laya, what that Cachujo, two Chujo, the two get me do. Run to the Kavenella Javana, social control to Kimundo. What did they social let it do Mudo Tane, or then. And the Shamba Casa Lamdere Chavana, so Magawa Chicken to Chicken, so they do Mudo. You are in or that, so the one at an time or Resha water, you are not up to get away. Pemba Jeva Tobachelas. What the Takaja, Sosuke, you did that, and a Tossig, Tossig, church to be Kakan Chagos, Tossig, Semtona, Yabuche. Physical toss Jangrins check. And Jangrins, any Raleigh anti two Mudo Chevache. Did do what Timaba Sota check. What did they kill? What did it check?
So here it's very important to not pass a judgment initially about these kinds of behaviors. But one must see how they are an obstacle to the practice of Dharma. And if one has friends, associates, or relatives like that, it is kind of probably wise to keep some physical distance, but to make sure that in our thinking about them, we are very close. It's a very kind of affectionate and close thinking. The second aspect about these kinds of things is to turn the mirror onto oneself and indulge in some analysis as to, for example, how fickle am I? Am I one who demonstrates kind of easy to be friends with and easy to fall out with? Am I a person who gets irritated and angry even in a joyful situation? Angry when something of benefit is said, and so on. And so one uses this as a means to do some analysis as to how appropriate my own behavior is. But in terms of associating with people like this, then better to keep some physical distance. But in terms of how we think about them, we must be careful to avoid any judgment and to make sure that we think about them, keep them close in mind.
What did it? Ganja, Dende Yimbadi in water, the list Dura, and Kuju Maja, water bacha, and the social do not water by ina, and the Manu Tapicha, and Shachla de Duna, and the water bachana, and the social children, Gagala Mando Karchagudo. And sometimes the Gagala Madu 제 개조디 딜레스도나 엔디 딜레게 도나 디처즈베 튕겨를 줘도 봐지 엔 개개를 먼저 갈지 보도
And so in our thinking about these verses, then the important thing is, first of all, to recognize in what sense these behaviors relate to me, and to figure out how I avoid those behaviors in future. The second is to understand how the behavior of this other, the person who's behaving like this, how is it that their behavior it can create an obstacle for my spiritual practice? And again, to preempt that by thinking of how I can avoid that becoming an obstacle if I do associate with them.
我到底来都是看得着，我到底关干出去的，读出去的，你根据嘛就完全，俺这了的呢，说个，的那个每个最的，说个娘们来把家多钱呢，是吧？的，你这公办作业，家把公办都作业，是吧？我等着钱呢，我等着钱呢。
So it's kind of very important that we are very clear. There's to be no kind of like bitter criticism of that person, of pointing out this fickleness and so on and so on and so on. But what we will put our energy into and our thinking is to, how do I apply this to my own practice? How can I use this to increase my compassion? How can I use this to increase my love? And that's the proper focus for our attention.
나 somba dele pamba mi to jing ne wala jo ni za wala to la cha do nam dan den ma la nga je de na de mi ne jo na khon ro ge nam ji chi le pamba to ji dan zhong na ji ba la da dui xian la me ba ta ko we ka we dam la so mi ge ji ye ba zhong sa.
And the third of these points was that there is no attainment of benefit, and that it is simply harm that accrues. Verses number 12 and 13 read, "They are envious of superiors, competitive with equals, arrogant towards inferiors, conceited when praised, and if anything unpleasant is said, they become angry. Never is any benefit derived from the childish. Through associating with the childish, there will certainly ensue unwholesomeness, such as praising myself and belittling others, and discussing the joys of cyclic existence."
我的这，但现在基本说说给我个大的干用个事，现在基本呢，说说给我那让来拖了，差多少的呀？若让来拖当，若他变做龙居原来的国内原来的看的让来压个的比大个多了，地了结束了干嘛多少差多几的？让了两把的了，呀，说说的那些就那是的，呀的了真心结的。也说说了教当大的呢马学外呢，的了通中节，说说外界见了，说说是不是印度的见了，用的我变做人控制教务的上上去，就开始通中节的，如果他把那闲人呢，刚才控制闲人要么是通中节的，然后闲人过了越多的节，他刚才马了就开始的，通中节，说说过了印度的外界节。我的的叫他这个的的我的阿瓦来把马里生也来把这个马里生了，通中接的，我到这里用的说是给我找到了吧？咱这说头部呢，点不开马不掐住，就出过呢脚不掐住的，是吧？我这猜对了，出过应该猜买了脚不才看掉了，猜对了脚不应该猜买了就出过才看掉了，我这个的也不该买吧？也不看要嘛的，我的人家也等这个说的马了呀。说出过了印度的这外界界，对了通州界的，他用这个，他说出给我个，对的了，对呢，这块界，对了，当然，人家说是其实过了印度的这块界的，对了，倒是根据这个明年吧，说对吧？每个人的想法一呢，就那呢，控制界的，控制界外，南些呢，基本的做吧，类似的， 집안에 거기 얘네 그 정부 전에 소소 녀목이 깨는 줘야 좀 가야 편도가 주고 말았어 마토 다바 갈라토 톱두고 말았어 삼로 된데 아니 지금 삼로 껴고 땅데 그들 편도하지 가려고 그랬어 시야 집안도 좋아네 집안 시야라 다데 라니라 되진다 다다 소소로 되래 다야 아니 소소로 되래 양답지 그러 가서 되라 다루와다 가자 차티그와 더 되바 용다자 되지 아니 셴바질라 아니 메레 밥디에 와다다 랑라 되 셴라 와다자 라 아니 셴게 교연가리네 바 되답지데 랑이 교연가리네 배답지데 아니 코와라 가와데스다 코웨기 되고 로다 디졸라 가와데 데라 창베 아니 담라 소바다 가자제 로다 코웨기 다 가자제 지금 전개되게 담라 소발라 로다 베나 주자라데 아니 저 차당 거래 되게들 담라 소발라 가네 미게와 나서 지장 니가 두고 두고서 집어 소소 집어도 좋아 미자오 근데 이번에 집어 주주 주비에 아니 시왕도 마 좋아 전에 디당 좋아 미제 저거 셔보자
So here it's discussing again these childish, and so they their attitude to those who are in a higher position, maybe in this terms of status or in terms of wealth, is one of jealousy. And so instead of rejoicing in their good fortune, they choose to be jealous about what they have. And then those that are at the same level as them, it's pure competitive attitude to compete with them. This is the kind of the fallback position for them. And then those who are lower, they generate this arrogant pride that looks down on other people, whether, they're saying, oh, my education, I have a higher education level than you have, and so on. Whatever it is, they make these distinctions to make sure that they see themselves as higher than those others. And so all of these situations kind of like lend itself to this kind of childish way of thinking. But it's common, isn't it? Even though the reality is that, none of these situations are permanent. They kind of, we can do it by own experience. You can see somebody born very wealthy can end up poverty stricken. If somebody who's poverty stricken at birth can end up very wealthy in terms of their position in life, their status, and so on. It's constantly could be, very quickly changing. But for the childish, they look on these situations kind of with a certain permanence. Likewise, then, when they hear themselves praised, it only leads to more arrogance in their attitudes. Yes, of course, I am that good. I am wonderful. And if they are criticized, then they're angry at that criticism, seeing it as unwarranted, unfair, unjustified. So it's kind of like when you're hanging around saying with these people that there is no benefit to be had at all, because they are simply a kind of like a lesson in how to generate mental affliction, really. And one must be very careful of that. And so also in kind of associating with the childish, you can pick up bad habits such as praising yourself and disparaging others. Very easy to do that, and to also kind of like really, getting attached to the stuff of cyclic existence, the talk within cyclic existence, the tales and the accounts and so on of what's happened in cyclic existence, and in such a way you're associating with so many different types of non-virtue, and that will definitely ensue. You kind of start the process too of hiding your own faults while exposing the faults of others. Behaviors like this, these can easily accrue in this kind of atmosphere. And so saying here that we must not associate with this ordinary being mentality of the childish mentality. and to differentiate ourselves very clearly.
다 니바 도도와네 대다 다다 셴데바 데네 풍아 주와 세.
And so the second is the conclusion, a brief conclusion. This comes at the beginning of verse number 14, which states, devoting myself to others in this way will bring about nothing but misfortune.
근데 이번에 대다 다다 지와 셴 펜중지 때문에 때문에 딕도서 풍아 주와 자 소소 딕베 도고서 차대에도 강한 편도 중과 풍아 주와 세도 시바오죠.
And so saying really, if I associated with the childish in this way, then it will only be a pile of negativity, and so only misfortune will ensue.
다 맞아 가서 된 거서 가서는 세딜레 아니 개와치마께서 개와치마를 타발에 탐제게 뭐 개체와 시되게 아니 기부 담아된 줄라 다 되고 그래서 되다.
And so it's really saying to keep reminding yourself that you are one of these capacities of being, where you see that the future life is more important than this one, that above that, liberation is more important than attainment of just a fortunate rebirth. And ultimately, the attainment of enlightenment supersedes the attainment of liberation.
그래다 어딘데 전에 가서 다 개세 단위 전부 모두 대사 유도 개세 단위 전부 유 기부 담아 주래. 근데 이마에서 모두 전주고 흉 장고야. 로전 저거 지다 예부 저거. 되고 뒤로 두어 봐. 뒤로 두어 봐.
And so saying, this is the way in which the great bodhisattvas will think and behave. And so it's kind of like in our position here, we're in the process of training the mind using this text. And so it's kind of saying, how do I apply these verses to the training of my own mind at this state?
What did it 로전 제 아니 데이터 투바 제 페퍼 두에 소리서 타이어 마겠음 제 담제 다 페퍼 제 타이어 마겠음 제 담제.
And so what is beneficial, what is the proper way to apply what is here, and to keep it within that context of that which is always beneficial is the focus on countless mother sentient beings.
어디를 다 집어 기부 담에와 대다게 토터베 타이베 마겠음 제 탐제를 페퍼 두에 제도 아니 된 거서데 아니 기부 담바들 된 거예요. 기부 담바를 때 바이나 담에 연대 주장 거로 봐.
And so that motivation to keep in front and foremost the benefit to countless sentient beings, all the sentient beings, and then to realize to keep as that which is reliable, the example of the great beings, the great bodhisattvas. And within that, then we can find the proper course of action to take. And we leave it there for today.
당간제 전제 당다디 타메와게 삼로당당 지당디 견주지고 요마다 견주지고 요마다 간제 디 뭐쳐봐이나 아니 디다 투바 저거 요바이나 뭐저 타바도 탐지 좀 두두고 말이야 숨고요 다 디다 투바 저건 탐지 타바 탐지 좀 두두고 말이야 디자 타바 탐지 계획 자기도 디 임바 인자 아니 디 상화도 마주가 저거도 디 상화도 마주가 제바이나 다가 저거서는 기부 담발을 된 거지. 기부 담발을 때 봐이나 아니 타입에 막에 샘제 탐제를 펴봐 주베 규定것도 두고도 보다 내가 늘 잡으러 어디래.
And so saying here, what again to reassert the distinction that should be made, that there is no judgment of the childish as laid out in these verses here. What is to be understood is that if we associate with these people, if we emulate their behavior, it will act as an obstacle to our attainment of liberation and the omniscient state of enlightenment. And therefore, what should we rely on then? The example is set by the great holy beings, the bodhisattvas, and to keep in mind that our goal always, all times, is to be of maximum benefit to all kind mother sentient beings.
나디 데레 기부 타메와 속에 samlo tanda di xiangwang du mangzho wache tamay wate samlo tanda di ane ngo chebe tona ane ya di yang su pento yorso yore dila dede ane tamay wala niji kiye jamba kiye ane deda tamche dunga gyudu guiza dunga dila nyudu tane tabata tamche kiba dubela ane tab kanda chigido dila ane jamba da niji da zewa kiye la dende pento urwa pento ure ane kuwa la nyeba chwe nyenchung kiye le pento ure di xiangwang du juba yina ane kuwa na tata minduwa ane di 되게 통한데 딜 년중기에 로 딜 페버 주에 로기에 딜 페도 디 샤와도 줘봐이나 아니 누구를 펜도고 요 말이야 샤와도 가르쳐 거스나 샤와도 기부 담배게 아니 저저 좀 샤와도 줘봐체 아니 펜안 잡아도 니지 깨서도 하나도 동에게 줄을랍 되게들 잡아도 디 동에게 줄을랍 그래서 딜 잡아도 니지 깨네 아니 딜 페버 주에 로기에 물어봐 어떻게 펜도고 요 이나 디 샤와도 줘는 누구도
And so really, in terms of these ordinary beings as being referred to here, the point is that we must not fall under the control of these beings, of kind of like really following after them slavishly. But what we can do is to understand how benefit can come out of that situation or that association. And so it's very easily to see that, you know, for a being who is in the process of creating the causes for suffering, that compassion is the automatic and the right response. And then love for wanting to place them into every happiness. So it's a question, it's a challenge to us to think of the means by which we can bring benefit out of this situation. It's we have the great example of the holy beings, the great bodhisattvas to follow. We know that the focus is to benefit all sentient beings, so we can't leave this sentient being out of that equation. So our attitude has to be clear, and not to copy what they're doing, but to be able to use that association to increase our compassion, to increase our love, and to get closer to emulating the great holy beings. So bring our minds to focus again on the merit field and the Guru Manindra in the merit field.
밤지라 교수서 라게 지와 이거 밤지 교수 밤용서 지와 빼마 담마 지와 교수서 근데 지나가 저건데 저는 유단 주와 되상요 후다 쳐봐 공부하셔 된데 예별로도 이거 홍용서 지와래 이메지 뭐냐 가서 교수 섬자서 다 라시가 맞어봐 이메서 다 여단데 된데 주와면도 저서면도 된데 이메서 다 산제 공부하서도 여타들이셔 로아티 규게 뭐지 누가 디게래 때네 다 죽토해지를 셔서 뭐다 딜은 예반년에 다 딜을 여바이나 다 맞으면서 가네티 산데 심지어 탐제기도 산제 공부마도 타마도 대한 유아비도 타바치고 서서 공부하시 된대기 예배 로 듬바데 아니 이게 아치래 아영소 줘발래 다 간자 다외经过 냐가와제 님의经过 그때도 내소선데네 반대서 라마로 다게 줘보다 더 구조 도정으로 순대처 담배 가서 배 니베가 수배가 때문에 산제 구마마도 저다 야고시 야라도 멘데데 저 거든지.
And so then with the focus on our Guru Manindra, then we reflect on the fact of how all the 6 realms of existence are completely pervaded by suffering, and that here it's knowing that no genuine happiness can accrue in cyclic existence, developing this sense of renunciation, of definite emergence from cyclic existence, produces the syllable BAM, which transforms into the lotus mandala seat on our crown. And then understanding how all inner and outer phenomena lack any objective existence. They are merely imputed by thought. They have this, we arrive at the mere negation of the object of negation, which produces the syllable hung, which transforms at on our crown to the sun mandala seat. And then as a result of thinking in that way, we understand that the phenomena therefore must rely and must arise independent. And that means that, that the attainment of enlightenment is possible because we can actually accrue all of the necessary causes and conditions, and they are validated. They can work together to attain that state. And that wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all is symbolized by the syllable "ah," which transforms into the moon mandala seat on our crown. And then we utter the invocation verse. So, glorious and precious root Guru, come take a lotus and moon seat placed here on my heart, at my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, the Guru Manindra moves from the merit field in front, and at the end of the second arrives at a pre-prepared seat on our crown. And at the end of the third, we have this certainty that the Buddha will remain until we attain the state of enlightenment. And we rejoice in this before offering the mandala and the 7 limbs of practice.
或者研究研究工作讲，研究工作讲的，但是看出主要的这个就是说，大家这搞把结尾呢，那我那真的在我曾经上完这么多的，我的人也把这研究结，俺的人也把落的一个让人的一个绑起来就说是，绑描述就把我当接起来就说是，那其他就跟着有点多，这个扩大去了，他妈是，真的也把落的，大家你没经过人家一个朋友说你没经过人家话就说是。 但是甚至他们这个都3节课嘛，你都马上说他把这个是我把些，真的你别对吧的，那一个20岁大概经过人家跟我讲，那你没经过那是半天在外，那么不是大概应该表面的个人不是最近我都说为个了这那么图标我结果呢马捐钱的，让个人不要把当这个当这个说，你不告诉说是不是带着说3节课嘛都我这他让我修就是高课，但是你不要把大家南边人带到那些第一点多这个我正好차가지 가게 대 다가오다 되베 청아 어머니 마음을 좀 벗은 게 같아. 되네 지수 자매가 송 어머 알아봐서 나지. 되네 땡데가 송 어머 얘다 말이도 마 셔만나 있어. 되네 좀 벗은 거 되겠죠. 어디네 저 아니 랑게 있는 게 위해서 어디를 고마셔.
And again, we focus on renunciation, how all of cyclic existence, all of the 6 realms of cyclic existence are pervaded by this suffering, how no fully qualified happiness is possible. And this produces this renunciation, which is symbolized by the syllable Bam, which produces now at our heart center the lotus mandala seat. And then coming to the recognizing how all inner and outer phenomena lack any objective existence, are merely imputed. We gain a conviction about that lack of the absence of the object of negation. And this produces the syllable Hong, which transforms into the sun mandala seat at our heart center. And then thinking of the how we can, on the basis of the phenomena arising in dependence, we can quickly attain that state of enlightenment, producing the syllable "ah," which transforms into the moon mandala seat at our heart center. Again, the invocation verse thrice, "O glorious and precious root Guru, come take a lotus and moon seat placed there at my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness, bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind." And at the end of the first recitation, the figure moves down into the central channel, and at the end of the second arrives at our pre-prepared seat. And finally, at the end of the third, the Guru Manindra is firmly seated, and we have the certainty of there remaining until we attain the state of enlightenment. And then the petals of the lotus fold over and are sealed at their tips by a white 5-pronged vajra. The package is surrounded by 3 mantras: the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha in a clockwise direction, the mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent arising in a clockwise direction.
我的是，让个你个是那么图标我那把的，故松图来，那为啥八都没把出来，让个结果呢，看这个把了为啥出来，那他妈没问题，这开发对呀，那就告诉了他，每个就问个最终的结果了说吧，他感觉这边看到嘛的，现在看到嘛，你吧，在地上，在我嘛，地我嘛，他妈没有在地块这个他妈，那你嘛，大清楚上我的那恐怕讲，大概那些个。 소소다베도 마다가와다 장주스베 라와다가 상하게 다스다가 파다말라 마구바다 제보 로벨로 마구바다 조사바소마 꾸조소라 네벨레지바 타베셔보 파베준들라 코와다바 도나 토레다 타베 겨도죠 코와다 예소가 예도 찌찌바자 근데 주여바네 바 다쳐서 삼자자 다가 이제 최주발라 개체보다 소소르데데 대단히 개체보이자 아니 저게 중식 커마녀와 자롱 틸레 교연 근데 주바네 마 장네 아니 바티게데 그가 비다고 야고 차소 삼자자 and then the single to make a digital dear, she was also some such a Lado da Kaja, Nudo Sanja Gomatovala, Kian Chishi, the Tamil Naja, by its Tamil Naja, Kian Tanjatan, Kanata, the Tamaram Jabaji Chatwa, Yamushi, so the Kumacha.
And then the light rays begin to emanate from the Guru Manindra at our heart center and permeate through every cell of our bodies, from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet, and affecting an incredibly powerful purification of all negativities and obscurations that we have accumulated since beginning this time, all the associated with the 10 non-virtues of all the naturally occurring negativities and all those actions proscribed by the Buddha, all of the negativities that we have accumulated in this life, in the one previous to this, in the one previous to that, and previous to that, going back to beginningless time and countless lifetimes, all of the infractions and downfalls associated with pratimoksha vows or bodhisattva vows or tantric vows, all of the disrespect we have shown to our parents, up to our gurus, all of the instances of abandoning the dharma, of causing negativity within the sangha and the triple gem, or splitting the dharma, sangha, and so on, and all of the negativities that create obstacles manifesting as physical ailments or mental ailments, that these are purified so that we can engage in a fully qualified practice. All of the imbalances within the elements or the channels, winds and drops are rebalanced and realigned. And in particular, that which causes the biggest obstacle to our quickly attaining the state of enlightenment, namely ordinary appearance, is swapped really for what is pure appearance.
소소 셈데 라마 샤자스가 투라 교수 랑게 룽아 예소 라마 샤자스 구조 동고 예메 교수 소소 디 대화데 대화 동고 대변이 수메 시켜서 라마 샤자스 구조 동고 예메 교와데 나라라 심에 봐 삼로자 디 도가 라마 샤자스 셈제다 장 셈제가 장은데 봐 파트네 셈제 탐제라 라마 샤자스 차차와데 티발라 때네 대다 산제 라마 샤자스 구조 동고 예메 교수 셈제 탐제게 내사게 아니 내 감성은 내 대다 단자자 아니 너그 교원 단자 단네 라마샤자 생게 다베 신도 교수 서로 오다 심지어 단자 라마샤자 살아 거기에서 다 니마 데리고 또 손을 가고.
So, and then through the combination of my own most subtle wind acting as the substantial cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of a Buddha. And then through the combination of my own more subtle mind acting as the substantial cause, together with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha. I now see my own body, speech, and mind as inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of a Buddha. This produces a sense of bliss which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. The place that I am in is also purified of all fault, and now becomes a Buddha pure realm. And then seeing myself as a fully enlightened being and also as empty of any inherent existence, I send out countless rays of light, equal in number to all of the sentient beings in all the 6 realms of existence. And upon dissolving into their crowns, they spontaneously arise as fully enlightened beings. The place that they are in also is transformed of all faults and transforms into a Buddha pure realm. Again, I rejoice in having, in this day, led all sentient beings to that state of enlightenment.
다 심지어 단계 라마 산지에 살라고 봐. 대시도 수수 교가 가지고 누구 소소 저하고 유대는 루바 그 두산 요마리서 코다 줘봐 공부하시. 대화때 대화 동바때 저번에 있으면 이 시켜서 성장 공부하죠.
And then this leading of all sentient beings to that state of enlightenment, the virtue that has facilitated that, and myself as the agent of that virtue, all are completely empty of inherent existence. They do not even exist at the atomical level. That understanding of their being merely imputed gives rise to a sense of bliss, which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness.
我的，但没把已经关了的，我那让那等着来了，我知道要嘛吧，一那样，他，但是但得上了当晚的现在，我那可能等着九月个，九月小，上上我等着就用完了，然后三节恐怕都不多，然后三节恐怕投了讲究是当年都被写了个，伢们结果多，他等着应不应对，安尼让个三呐、土呐、庄呐、年呐、对呐，他感觉。 那当个的超人呢，他们西巴人那样的，讲究个是当年都被写来给那个，那春节都找到吧，这个人，上次我在那就到吧，这个人，上次我在平嘛当，那看到都接到吧，变成钱，我在那。
And so, of course, we are operating at the level of imagination and aspiration here. It certainly isn't that easy to attain the state of enlightenment. Nevertheless, in my dedication, I make a very sincere pledge that I will do whatever I possibly can to quickly make this state manifest and to really attain enlightenment, with the understanding that that means I must perfect my mind of enlightenment and gain a direct realization of the wisdom of emptiness. And in that context, I will pledge to use everything at my disposal. Whatever I am doing, whether I am eating or drinking or moving or going back and forth or at work or whatever, in whatever I'm doing, even at the point of death, I will use every situation as a conducive condition for strengthening my mind of enlightenment, for deepening my wisdom realizing emptiness.
要安的也就多大，来嘛三界诸君。 若我今将把了吧，爹上来过把来说，将军在我了不见，马家把那么解决。 Kia ba nyam ba me ba yang bo nia gong tu ya wa ra shu to nie da wa de bo jia ma ye ba na ma ye yu ji Kia ba nyam ba me ba yang Bo ne gong do pe wa shu Kariya ra ve shin wa so pe da de wa ma lu ju ve ne che ria se wa te te ja do ye sha be ti de pa do te ju ra te me
Make the way
Dear,
You are Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of compassion, not aimed at true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception, Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, Losangrakpa, at your feet I make requests.
Thank you. Thank you, Lord. Everyone,
Thank you,
thank you.
everybody.
Take care.
Thank you, General.